Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of 10 Minute Tuesday. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And today I have a great guest, my friend, my homie, coworker, former coworker, Cait the Great. Cait, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing great. It's great to be here. I've been a long time listener, so it's fun to be on the podcast.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. All right, so we've done a number of these. Cait, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Cait Sojka. I am the manager of dashboards and insights at Visa, formerly with Lovelytics, which is how Sekou and I got to spend so much time together. But yeah, live in Austin, Texas, and love Tableau.
Awesome, awesome. So manager now, we worked together at Lovelytics and then worked for Tableau at some point too as well. But, really thinking about your journey, what really compels you to get into data to begin with?
Yeah, so I had like a very meandering career progression. So I spent the first 6 years of my career working at local nonprofits in Kansas City. So one of those, I worked at a homeless shelter, an animal shelter, and a youth education organization. So kind of all over the place. But definitely picked up my love of data there. I think there's a long-standing tradition in the nonprofit sector for making a lot of gut-based decisions, like it feels like the right thing to do. And I think that when you have really limited resources, it's even more important sometimes to really consider like where are we having the most impact and how can we, be the best stewards of the resources that we have. So definitely sparked my interest there, but it actually wasn't until I'd already moved to Austin. I had a couple friends at the time. I was the doing regional development sales training basically for a commercial cleaning company, and had a couple friends that worked at Tableau in Austin, and they were like, hey, I think that you'd be good at selling this. You should just give it a go. And managed to be fortunate enough to get an opportunity to do that and pretty immediately fell in love with Tableau. So that was really my foray into the, data or analytics space at all. So very, very random.
That's awesome. I love the I guess you could say random, but the trajectory of it, like starting somewhere nonprofit where there's a gut feeling, or we feel like we should do this to actually start being more data driven, looking at the insights and understanding what's going on. So I think that's fantastic. All right. So thinking about your journey, we have had roles and different opportunities that we might not have loved, and this job is not necessarily data specific. But to date, what has been your least favorite job that you've ever had in your career or in your life?
So random. The only job I've ever really had that I like literally couldn't stand, I worked at a swimsuit store. It was one of my first jobs, and it was about as weird as you could imagine it being. Yeah, I won't get into details, but it was not great. I think too, something that kind of just like continued throughout my career is just like how important having a manager that I connect with or that is supportive and things like that really is to me. And I feel like that job was the first time where I had that feeling of like, oh, who I work for really matters here. My manager at that store was just like a tinge neurotic. And I don't know if you've ever been into a clothing store where they hang things on like the pants hangers, you know what I'm talking about? Like the little clippy type hangers.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we had like, it's a swimsuit store. So we had like a bunch of like round racks, right? Where we
Yep.
would hang swimsuits on those hangers. And she would insist that they be perfectly level all around the top, which like square peg round hole, you know what I mean, trying to do. So we would spend like an extra like hour every single night just like making them perfectly fit, which was, I don't know. It was one of those experiences where you're like, wow, okay, like small things really matter to some people, right? Like, and you're not going to
Yeah.
convince them otherwise. So it's funny because in the data space, right, I feel like we end up with those sorts of clients too, where it's like this really small thing that to us, we're like, oh, the structure's there, or, we really revealed these insights in the data, but it's like, no, this like one small thing is really, they're getting hung up on it every day. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely been there, and to the data point, right? You create this wireframe. Well, why does the text say this? And it's like, come on, man,
Yep.
it's made up text.
Yes, and you're like, it's a complete sample. I think that's why I've gotten in the habit of like, even now, like when I'm demonstrating something, even at Visa, right? They're internal clients, like where I won't show them their data. Like it's just a sample. So that way they don't get hung up. Because every
Yeah.
time where we demo with like real data, they're like, huh, that was like
Hmm.
50% yesterday. Why is it showing? And it's like, that's not the purpose of this meeting.
You're right. Oh man, that's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, retail is fascinating. You have those people who want their store to be clean and just sorted correctly, and then at 9 o'clock the next day, 10 o'clock, whatever it is, it's a wrap. As soon as you have like 10 customers come in and just they don't care, they just break everything up.
Or like kids that would come in and just like
Yeah,
pull
exactly.
everything off the rack anyways. And you're just like, cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so think about the journey some more. We have ups and downs, and there's very good times where we're on super highs, but then there's times where it's like, oh, that really sucked. So I like to think of the concept of failing forward. So what is your biggest failure? Quotation marks around failure, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. So I think that the biggest one I've ever had in like my entire career is actually when I was working at a nonprofit. And I think that I would categorize the failure as not communicating well to my superior. I think at the time I was really young, first of all. And second of all, as continues to be the case, I'm very outspoken. I feel like you've probably experienced me in that way, right? Like I like to just share what's on my mind, but time and place, right? And learning how to have conversations with tact, and that you can say something that's true, but if it's not kind or helpful, it doesn't really matter in the long run. And so I think that that was an experience in which I realized or sort of recognized, hey, I have an opportunity to either be somebody that other people want to work with and want to promote and want to, work alongside, or be somebody that is with the right intentions pointing out maybe like flaws or concerns or things like that, but it's not the right time and place, or it's not the right tone. And so I think that as I've sort of moved forward in my career, continuing to be somebody that is willing to sort of say the hard thing, but doing it in a way that isn't threatening or isn't in front of a bunch of people or those types of things. And so, yeah, just really learning that lesson early on, I think was a blessing that it wasn't super far along into my career. And yeah, just really focusing on making sure that we're being authentic and communicating what needs to be said, but doing it in a way that makes it more well received from people for sure.
I love that. That's a great lesson that a lot of us learn, definitely, especially as we move up into leadership roles, and we'll express things when they're on our mind. So, kind of a follow up question to that. You recently just got a promotion to a manager at Visa, and kind of have a team. Well, you do have a team under you. Do you feel like that experience has helped you out now as a manager?
Weirdly, Visa has like a lot of people like me who have a managerial title but don't actually get to manage
Ah,
people. So someday, but I do think about that in terms of honestly, like even in the way that I relate to other folks, right? In terms of, being new at Visa, obviously I have a fresh perspective and there's things where I'm like, why do we do that, right? But I think that earlier in my career, I would have been one to be like, oh, we got to fix this and I got to make people aware. And, this is so important. And I think that I still have those types of conversations, but those are closed door conversations with my manager, right? And not where it's like this huge team meeting and I'm like, what are we doing here, right? So I definitely feel like I've been really fortunate in terms of the ways in which I've had managers, especially in my like data section of my career, where they've been really receptive to that and being able to take feedback that I can provide and see that as an asset and not as like criticism or things like that. I definitely hope someday to get to have a, team underneath me and all of that. So definitely aspirational, and it feels like that could be the possibility at Visa, which is a really big reason why I joined the team in the first place. But yeah, haven't had the pleasure of managing people in a really long time. So one of those sort of things that I think, yeah, just focusing on being somebody who can be well managed.
Awesome. Love that. Love that. All right. So, my audience typically for this podcast are people who are starting out in their career in data, or they're trying to transition and get into it. So, what is one piece of advice you give someone who's just starting out in their career?
Yeah, man, I have so many pieces of advice because I too, sort of made that transition and even like a little bit later, right, into my career. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is to leverage your current expertise into getting that first role, right? So, for example, for me, right, that meant taking a sales job at a tech company in order to break into a technical space, right? For somebody else, maybe they've been working in healthcare for 30 years and they're trying to transition. Okay, well, maybe they, taken a Power BI course or they worked with you, right, on some projects or things like that. Great. Take a data analyst job in the healthcare field. It might not be what you want to do forever, right? Especially, I'm sure a lot of folks are like, no, I want the job to not be in healthcare or whatever it is. But being able to have that sort of institutional and sort of segment wise knowledge is going to be such an asset that I think a lot of analysts don't consider when they take jobs. For folks that are fresh out of college, right? I think that being able to have, again, whatever experience they've had. So maybe they've worked in retail and that was just a summer job, but they understand what the pros, cons, pitfalls of working in retail is. Great. Look for an analytics or a data job in a retail sector and then take that as your first gig, knowing that once you have the expertise, the portfolio, the resume to move into a different industry, you'll be able to. And what's an extra, 2 years in the grand scheme of a 50-year career, right? Since I think most of us are probably going to work until we're 70 or whatever it may be. Never retiring.
No, never, ever. Yeah, like we're doomed. No, this is great. This is fantastic advice. A lot of great gems. I think definitely people don't leverage what they already built out. They kind of just like make it a true false statement. Whereas like I have 30 years of this and I can't leverage this. I need to start brand spanking new into this new role when really you can leverage a lot of stuff you've already done to break into it. So fantastic advice. So I'm actually going to take that when people ask me that question. So appreciate you, Cait.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So where can listeners find you at online?
I'm a old school. I'm like a LinkedIn or bust. So definitely find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. Feel free. People can DM me there. Or yeah, like any of the content that I sporadically put out. I'm not consistent like you. I'm like once a month I'll get a wild hair to like, put together something that I like was struggling with and figured out, or, really great advice that I saw somebody else post or something like that. But yeah, Eric Bolish, my old manager and our former coworker, keeps trying to get me on Twitter and everything. And nope, that's not happening. I literally just can't figure out how to make it work. And that sounds so embarrassing, but it's just true.
That's so funny. All right, follow Cait on LinkedIn. I'm going to do a plug for her. Just spoke at the Tableau conference, depending on when you listen to this. So spoke at Tableau conference 2024. That was in San Diego on text tables. Was that right?
Yep.
Yep. So it's on Salesforce. I think it's online. Check her out. Great stuff if you're using Tableau. I learned some great stuff off of it. So fantastic person, Cait. I appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you too. Keep up the good work. I love getting to see people's perspectives on this. So really cool to get to be a part of it, and definitely look forward to seeing who else you bring on.
I appreciate you. Thanks so much, Cait. And like I said in the beginning, if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to y'all next week. Have a great day.